My name is David Miguel Lerman. I am a assistant district attorney from Milwaukee County, where I've been working for 20 years now. And I finished law school in 1984 at the University of Wisconsin. After that, I worked in Israel for 3 years before moving back and coming to this job. And in the course of my first 10 or 12 years in the office, I did the whole range of trial work, not homicides, not sexual assaults, but felonies, misdemeanors, children's court work. And somewhere along the way there, probably about 10 years ago, I had an assignment in what was called the Consumer Fraud Unit. It was a one-person unit. And I spent a lot of time talking with homeowners who were, shafted out of money by contractors. So there ended up being a lot of quasi-mediation in my office. It's not really straight mediation, because of course I had this incredible hammer over the contractor's head if there was enough of a case. But that was one of the drives, I think, that got me interested in a different way of doing business in the criminal justice realm. Somewhere along the way, up to that point, I was beginning to feel some frustration with the normal course of business, seeing how victims of crime were still being treated as pieces of evidence, despite the good intentions of the good efforts made by this office, which was one of the first offices in the country to have a victim witness unit, people who actually walked with victims through the system. And despite those good designs, people were still needing to be in court at 8:30 and weren't having certain questions answered and weren't being satisfied by the court process, because after all, the court process was paramount to the human side of the situation. That's not even taking into account the offender's side, where there's also similar types of human frustrations over the system. And in looking at how we started the restorative justice programming in the office, it was, again, around that time when I had a conversation with a guy in Des Moines, Iowa, named Fred Gay, who's a deputy DA to this day. And in Des Moines, they have, at that time, and they still do have an active conferencing type of program in place there, and I consider him my mentor as a prosecutor. But of course, it also wouldn't have happened without it being the development of the programming we have here in Milwaukee, without the window of opportunity provided by then DA Michael McCann, who just left office 2 years ago. He was the DA here for 38 years, very devout Catholic, very keyed into certain social justice issues, opposed to the death penalty, and vocally so. You don't see that among many prosecutors. And he provided the window of opportunity for me to pursue something. There wasn't much of a parameter placed on me. Just go and pursue. So I started doing that. I started by working with the faith community as one ally first, and then along the way we picked up other allies, and we're talking mid-90s here at this point. And we developed a restorative justice task force through the county board, so we actually got some political backing. There was no money at the time yet, but this board allowed us to, it created a framework through which we could apply for grants in conjunction with the DA's office, and we developed a model. We developed a we found a test case to do. So I don't remember the year at this point, 1997, probably 98 maybe. Where we had what was a community conference, and it was very successful. And kind of that set us on our way. I love sharing the pilot case. From, at this point, it's 10, 12 years ago. Again, I'm not exactly sure, because it's just so, it conveys the idea so cleanly. Because it's such a simple, straightforward case. It's a 19-year-old young woman who was a cashier at a grocery store who took money from the till. At that time, taking $1,000 was a felony in Wisconsin. And she was charged with a misdemeanor because she had enough money to get back right away to lower it to the misdemeanor amount. The store, for some reason, representatives of the store were intrigued by the idea of having this sit down with her, because she did not present as, they had no suspicion that she would do something like that. I mean, of course, they don't suspect anybody would, I suppose, but and at the conference, the human resources manager was particularly compelling in the way she spoke with the young woman. I'm so sorry that you did this. I so appreciated you during our interview. I so much liked you, and it was, I felt strongly about you as a person, and wanting, knowing you're on your way to college, knowing that we were providing a job for you to help you get to college, etc. It was that kind of relationship. And the young woman, the story she told was that she took the money because her own mother was strung out on drugs. She wasn't. She was on her way to college, and she had younger siblings at home who needed the extra support, and she was a summer. She was at wit's end, this 19-year-old, because she was being mom to her younger siblings, being mom to mom, and mom was, being strung out on drugs. The stories on both sides were, again, compelling from just a human interest perspective, from such a typical low-end garden variety case from a prosecutor's eyes. I mean, it's just an employee theft, and it's so simple to prove. There's nothing to this. It's a straight probation case. If you got a tough judge, maybe the judge would sentence this young woman to 15 days, or something like that. I don't remember what the recommendation was on the file when we got it. But the conference was, of course, this restorative intervention, restorative collaborative intervention, allowed for these people to air their stories, to have both their needs met, the victim hearing the story of why. They didn't really know why it had happened. The police reports were dry. The police reports didn't have anything in there about mom being strung out on drugs. Again, very compelling human interest story. When you peel off the layers of just the police reports. At the conference, the resolution, or one of the conditions that the young woman had to meet, was going back to the store, not to work, but to talk to the next group of young cashiers in training. So the store got a tremendous benefit out of this. They got a peer to the young employees to tell the story of what happens when you are tempted by all that money in the till, and what happens to you when you're caught. Far better than having an HR manager who looks like me, 50s, whatever, wag their finger. Now don't do this or else. Far different story. And the young woman gained something as well. Besides working out from underneath the conviction, she had the experience of standing up and talking. So there was some competency gained on her part. That she's a nurse today. With a theft conviction, she would not have been a nurse. So, I mean, we know from that story that a lot changed. And she had no other criminal convictions after that. Unlikely that a person like her would have anyhow. But again, you don't know what once somebody's in the system, you don't know what gets triggered. Having the conviction, I can't hire you, we don't know what obstacles would have been placed in her way.